Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another installment of our superhero parables. Today we're on installment number 6. We're going to be talking about the Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer, I personally think, is one of the coolest looking uh, comic book heroes there is out there. However, his story or his background's a little different. So we're just going to go back into the origin story today, tell you a little bit about the Silver Surfer, but I'm also going to partner that with a character or a person from the Bible that you might have heard from or about. And when you hear about their two stories, maybe there's some similarities that might remind us of something important. And so today, the real baseline or the key truth that we want to understand is how important it is to find something that is worth living for, possibly something worth dying for, something that is good, or something that you can commit your life to in such a way that it makes your life worth really living. Okay? And so today, Silver Surfer, a guy named Norrin Radd, which if you lived in the 80s, that's just a cool name, Norrin Radd. But Norrin Radd is an astronomer from the planet Zenn-La. And this is a planet that, as he is kind of looking out into space as an astronomer, he sees somebody approaching this cosmic bully. And his name is Galactus. And Galactus goes around the cosmos looking for planets or life forms to destroy, devour, or absorb. And he takes all of their life or their energy and absorbs it into himself. So that's how he continues to go. And that's what he does in life, is he just goes around as a cosmic bully looking for life to devour. Which right there, we'll go ahead and stop and just tell you, that's pretty clear. What kind of character would he be? Just like the cosmic bully, the devil, who searches, and his whole life is about ruining or destroying lives, devouring lives. John 10:10 says, the thief has come to steal, kill, destroy. That's exactly what Galactus did. He would come towards a planet, he would then inhabit that planet and just devour it and use all that energy for himself to use for his further existence. So when Norrin Radd sees Galactus coming to their planet, he wants to save himself, more or less. He wants to do something that's good for him. He's thinking personally here about himself, and he decides that he will strike a deal with Galactus. But first he tries to reason with him, and he says, isn't there some other form out there of life, or there's some form of energy out there that you could absorb that wouldn't destroy planets or destroy life? There's got to be something out there that you can devour that would keep you alive, satisfy you without stealing life. And so what starts out as a good thing in reasoning, he ends up making a deal with him. Galactus says, I don't know if there is or not. I don't know, because I don't know how that works. However, I do know if you would like to go be my herald or my servant or my slave, and you want to go through the cosmos and you find and see if there are things out there that I could use to live on, then that's up to you. But if not, then you have to help me find other planets or life forms that I can devour. And in return, I won't devour you or your planet. And so, to save himself, more or less, the Norrin Radd says, sure, I'll do that for you. And so he uses his power, Galactus does, to grant Norrin Radd a little bit of power. And he gives him a makeover. And he gives him this metallic sheen, metal, liquid look that will hold up, his body will hold up under extreme travel through hyperspace, more or less, through space, is his body will hold up. And what he gives him to travel on is this surfboard. And so he more or less is this cool figure that kind of surfs through the galaxies looking for life forms or energy sources for Galactus. However, when he can't find any other to continually save himself, he more or less, and to better himself, he has to then lead Galactus to other planets with other life, and he's actually working for the enemy, helping him devour other planets and other life. And it's not good. So that's not a superheroic thing to do. It's not a good thing to do. But Norrin Radd, that's his job. He's the herald for Galactus, which goes out and he seeks to serve him by giving him ways to devour others, which kind of turns us to our character in the Bible. Okay, guy named Matthew. We know him as Matthew. He starts out as a guy named Levi. Levi is a guy who is actually working for the enemy. He's a guy who is more or less struck a deal with the enemy for his own good against other people. And it just happens to be his own people, the Israelites. Rome has taken over and they rule over the area of Israel. And so the Israelites have to kind of pay taxes to and live under the rules of Rome. So Levi has struck a deal with the Roman rulers and says, hey, listen, since you have to collect, taxes from them, somebody's got to go out there and do it. How about I work for you, I'll collect taxes off them, pay those taxes to you, but I also can get paid to do that, and I'm in good with you. And so this is good for me. And so Rome has set that up that way, that there would be people who would work for Rome who were actually Israelites against their own people. And so it's kind of like Rome is that bully behind and empowering Levi to go against his own people and more or less in some ways steal from, take from, and devour his own people for the enemy. And so that's the picture there. And I will say this, when people saw, or planets saw, the Silver Surfer coming, that's not a good day. Only bad was going to follow. The only reason he was there was to see or to find life for the cosmic bully Galactus to devour. When people saw Levi or guys like Levi at their tax collector booth, not a good thing. The only reason they were there was to steal or take from us for the bully Rome. And so, needless to say, I don't think the Silver Surfer, he lived a pretty lonely life. Nobody befriended him, and he wasn't in good with anybody. And guys like Levi had no Israelite friends. They hated the tax collectors. And so he was a hated man at this time. And into that picture, we see that the Silver Surfer comes to Earth and he meets up with a team of people. We know him as the Fantastic Four. But this scientist that's of the Fantastic Four, he talks to him and tries to reason with him and kind of lets him know that this isn't good and people are being devoured and some things aren't worth living for in that sense, and there are much more things worth dying for. And so they're going to stand up to the Silver Surfer, and they'll stand up to Galactus if that's what it takes, but they are not going to let the people of Earth be devoured. And so when he sees that in them, he realizes there's something great, and there maybe is something I've been missing in life. There's something greater worth living for. And he says it this way. He says, listen, perhaps for the first time within memory, I have found something worth protecting. For I have learned how glorious it can be to have a cause worth dying for. Meaning, hey, maybe it's not all about just me staying alive and me saving me or doing things for me. And maybe there's greater things worth living for, possibly even greater things, even if it takes my life, worth dying for. And that is kind of where Matthew, I believe, is. We have this crazy account where Jesus is preaching and teaching. It says, Mark chapter 2, verse 13, then Jesus went out to the lakeside again and taught the crowds that were coming to him. And as he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting at his tax collector booth. He walks up to him and he says, "Follow me and be my disciple," which is a crazy thing to do. In those days, for a great teacher, a rabbi, a leader to come to you, a religious leader, and ask you to follow him or be his disciple was a high praise. It was a great thing to be asked to do. And only certain people were ever asked to do those things. However, Jesus took normal people and asked them to follow him. Jesus even goes to a guy that's absolutely hated, who is actually a slave or servant to Rome, against his own people, who is like the worst kind of sinner out there, is what the Israelites think. They always say, sinners and tax collectors. Like they have a place worse than all the other sinners out there. And so he goes to this man and he asks him, "Why don't you leave what you're doing and come and follow me?" And it says that Levi does that. He gets up from his tax collector's booth and he leaves him. And it says later on he even invites Jesus and his disciples over to the house with some other tax collectors, and they're going to kind of throw a party together and have some meal at his house and enjoy each other's company. And some of the religious leaders see that, they hate it, they get mad, and they say, "Why would a guy like Jesus hang out with scum like that?" And Jesus in turn knows what they're talking about, and Jesus looks at those religious leaders and he says, "Listen, it's not the healthy who need a doctor. And it's not those who believe they're righteous or good that I came for. I came," he says, "for those, not to those who think they are righteous, but to those who know they are sinners." And listen, at that point, when the Silver Surfer talks to the Fantastic Four, he realizes what he's been doing is wrong and he's a sinner. And he needs something much greater in his life and something better to live for. When Levi gets approached by Jesus, he already knows he's a horrible sinner. He knows what he's doing is wrong. He knows he's stealing from his own people and working for the enemy. And so he jumps on that chance for something better to live for. And so I want to ask you, in the process, is what you are living for? What's your life all about? Is it really all about you? Is it about you possibly using others or taking from others for your own good? Is it about what you get out of everything? And is your whole outlook on life really something that is selfish, or something about you, or how it helps you? Because in the end, if you're living for the stuff, the things, your own pleasures, your own wealth, your own position, your own power, moving yourself forward in life, and you have that selfish outlook, you're missing the point of what life's all about. And in reality, you may not know this, but you have been consumed kind of by the enemy. You've been tricked. You've been played. And he's kind of devoured your life, and you're his slave or servant in this world. And so you're a slave to sin. You're a slave to him. You're a slave to those things in the world. And you actually use your life kind of against others, or with no regard towards others, as long as you get what you want out of it. Most people who live in addictions and things like that, this is how their life is. They fall into that and they become slave to that without even knowing it or recognizing it. But they also are working against or stealing from or taking life around them for their own. And Jesus is coming to you saying, "Hey, I already know who you are. You really already know who you are. There's something much greater worth living for out there. Saving lives, saving people, siding not with the enemy, but with the King, and with what is righteous rather than what is wrong or evil, is much greater. It's not only worth living for, it's worth dying for." And so I ask you, the great thing I love about the Silver Surfer is he ends up teaming up with the Fantastic Four against Galactus to expel him kind of from our universe so that he can't absorb the planet Earth, but in the process, he takes the brunt of the injury from that, and he gets his powers kind of diminished, and he's confined to the earth for the rest of this time. And so he becomes kind of just somebody who works with them to fight evil on earth, but he, for the first time, is free from being a slave towards Galactus and his sin. For the first time, you might be understanding that you could be free from your sin and your life might be used for much greater things. And if you would commit your life to Christ, just like Levi did, Jesus changes his name to Matthew, more or less saying you have a brand new life. What you used to do isn't what you are anymore. And what you used to do isn't what you do today. No longer are you a slave to Rome or sin. You now are a servant of the King, and your life is going to be lived to serve the King. And when we read the Gospels today, one of the first Gospel written to really the Israelites or the Jewish people is by a man named Matthew, and that was that tax collector. God used his life to serve him for the rest of his life, and he gave him true life, a life that was lived for the King, a life that gave eternal life in the end, and a life that was lived to bring eternal life to others rather than steal from others. Okay? So think about your life. What are you really living for, and what's your life committed to? It's very important to answer that question.